Yes, I was born in New York, in Lower Manhattan. Grew up there, went away to school, went away to college, went away for a postgraduate year to the University of St Andrews in Scotland, and then came back and did more studying in America, and ended up with a PhD. And it was in a subject, eventually ancient Roman history, which you can't make a living out of except by teaching it to others, which is paradoxical when you think of it. If it is obviously useless, why should anyone pay you to impart it? But anyway, that's the way higher education goes. So luckily enough, I was able to be a teacher all my life till I retired when I was 65. And then went on being a teacher, which was a piece of good luck that goes with being in the research end and publishing end of teaching. I have to confess straight away, I'm not optimistic about the future in the slightest, and I haven't been for 50 years. A long time ago, there was a movement called Zero Population Growth, ZPG. The argument underlying that was there are just too damn many people on the face of the globe. There's not room for them, and life is going to get more and more conflicted and desperate as a consequence of the overburdening of the planet. Zero population growth encountered the combination of sex urge and reproductive urge, which are unbeatable, and the population has increased to a point where we are now living through a period when the pressure of the unlucky on the secluded or luckier areas of the temperate zones, for example, have become very testing. And to this predicament of having so many people and such abuse of resources is added the environmental problem of a globe that is getting more and more unfriendly to us of our own making. I don't see, despite various books I've read, books that you may have read, that there is, in reality, in political reality, given the inequalities that are alarming to me, any hope of a long-term answer. I noticed in the newspaper today that a questionnaire discovered only a minority of Roman Catholics have even heard of the encyclical, if that's the right term for it, issued by Pope Francis on the environment, which is in many better informed quarters seen as a big deal, and yet which cannot get traction with the general public of its own particular population, let alone of the world population whom the Pope addresses. So I think I've predicted to myself for a long time that my grandchildren are going to have extremely difficult moral choices to confront, and whatever their intent, those choices will be beyond their power to solve properly. Well, that is so large a question. I wouldn't know what to say. One small thing occurs to me, which is from a personal experience of having had a long time in education, and in the course of that, many encounters with roommates, half of whom I didn't choose, and from all of whom I came away with a slightly enlarged tolerance for difference. And from that I conclude that exposing oneself to close acquaintance, and perhaps an affectionate acquaintance with people you weren't especially drawn to, is a very good exercise right through life, because there is no better way of opening your mind to something else than being forced to out of sheer friendship. There was an ancient Greek poet who said, "The fox knows many things, the hedgehog knows one big thing." And that was used as a metaphor for one's intellectual and moral constitution, I suppose, and then picked up as for the title of an essay by an English philosopher 50 years ago. The fox and the hedgehog are easily pictured differences in their approach to handling a difficult world, a world with predators and enemies and the like. 2 years ago, for the first time, I saw a fox in the wildlife, in a bird life sanctuary, where a fox, which of course would naturally be found where there were birds, was rambling through the woods close to where I was, and then went on absolutely silently into a marsh beyond. And I began to see what the adjective foxy means. It means terribly quick, alert, your eyes and your ears poking so sharply in 10 different directions at once, and your motion across whatever terrain you're traversing so delicate and impulsive, you go off in all sorts of directions. The opposite was the hedgehog, which whenever a predator gets too close just rolls up in a ball, as you know, and projects nothing but its spiny thorns in its hide, which will keep anyone from even patting it, let alone biting it. I focus on the fox as something quite similar to the afflicted younger generation who find themselves able to access an infinitude of stimulating thoughts, contacts, facts, everything at their fingertips, but only for 2 seconds, 3 seconds. And this phenomenon of accessibility of factoids, of contacts, in recent years has been a subject of concern and discussion by a million people. So I have nothing to add to that, except that foxiness, I don't think, works. It doesn't work if you don't give the time to second thoughts and third thoughts and a fourth layer of why and a fifth layer of how to understand a few things, at least the way a hedgehog understands what keeps him alive. Well, I think it is quite misguided, although sort of likably misguided, to think that you can learn lessons for the future from the past. I don't believe that's true because of the important differences of one set of circumstances and outcomes from another. And that makes me think of the almost literally infinite choice of things to think about in the present and the past, which constitute the usual definition of history. Everything, events, personalities, circumstances, outcomes, general situations, everything is open to the study of the historian's curiosity. And confronted with this infinitude of information, there can be nothing more important than choosing what to look at. Obviously, you can't look at everything. You have to choose what is the manner of selection. The answer is historical significance, that is, the quality of importance to people and to a sufficient number of people to have changed the story of the past, even the very recent past. Yes, well, of course, in a snowstorm, the most important thing is shelter. So, or in the middle of a flood, you want a boat. So it's a rather open-ended question. But I decided perhaps you wanted to get at importance in the shaping of one's life or in determining of one's general conduct and or perhaps choices of conduct that you would like to see prevail everywhere. And if I had to give an answer where 1,000 are possible, I would put it in the shape of the word equality. The reason I say that is meaning the equality of all people, individuals, one with another, is that where people are equal, there is some chance of their behaving in a social way toward each other rather than in a manner that has losers and winners. If you can imagine a world in which there were no rich as against poor, and no weak as against strong, and no exploiters against those exploited, but where the table was even for everybody, then while there would certainly be conflicts and people grabbing things and quarreling and behaving in costly ways toward each other, the natural aggressiveness of our nature, which is part of our DNA, part of being our animal selves, might be balanced by the larger part of ourselves that is pro-social. We are social animals like wolves and whales and sheep and ants and a very great number of animal species, which for the ultimate reason of survival, and what can be more important than staying alive, have to get along with each other. So in that large regard, thinking of the entirety of our species and ourselves as part of that group, it's very important that we bring to the top of our behavior those impulses which are biological and forceful and not too disruptive of the fabric of good behavior to each other. I do believe that as the biologists say, hardwired impulses that are built into us enable us to live and survive as a more or less peaceful species. And it's important to allow that equality to have a fair chance. It is, for instance, demonstrable by biologists that animals have a sense of fairness, which you can test in looking at how they distribute food, for instance, or how they distribute strength. The weak toward the strong toward the weak. Best known, I suppose, are photographs on nature videos of the conduct of elephants taking care of their young, their pregnant, their elderly, and so on. All of this evidence of our hardwired impulses, I think, is very encouraging, and the moments when it's likely to fail are moments when the equality possible between people is canceled by the means we have ourselves created in steeply unequal societies and economies. So that's why I say equality seems to me a very, very big matter.